Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Kimberly Cloud Show. I'm your host, Kimberly Cloud. I have a very, very special guest here for the show today. Can you go ahead and announce to the world who you are and where you're calling from?
To the world. I love it. I'm Carol Smaldino, LCSW, and I'm in Fort Collins, Colorado. Still getting used to it.
Okay. And wow, I'm glad to hear you're in Colorado. Can you give me an intro about your past leading up into your present? You can be however extensive you want to be.
Oh, I don't think so. I think you'd need about hours. But okay, let's see. I have a chapter in a new book, so I'll say that I about my past. It wasn't so easy, a lot of arguing, a lot of um, very middle class neighborhood, but in the confines of that apartment, there was a lot of messiness, and so I started to play psychologist when I was 11. It's like the one creative thing I think about when I think about my childhood. And I got a friend to go outside, and I gave her a problem, and she came inside, and I solved it, and I did that over and over again. And then I thought I just was going to be a psychologist so I could understand things so I wouldn't be so affected by them. And then uh, I decided that I was going to be a psychiatric social worker because it was easier. In those days, it was kind of more political, maybe, was more also working for economic social change. So that. I went to Brooklyn College and started there. And then I escaped to Italy and found Italian. And I love Italy. And I found my husband. And I
What
kind
is
of,
your best food in Italian? What is your best
oh my
food?
God, probably seafood, a good spaghetti with clam sauce. Oh my God.
What was the best attraction over there?
I was going to say my husband, but that's like uh, the best attraction was when I got lost and I was 18 and a half and I got lost. And I found myself on a hill at the top of Florence. And I just said, I love this city. I just love this city. It was like home, felt like my first home.
Okay.
And then I met
And
my husband there. I'm just going to say, I did meet my husband there. And on a good day, I still like him.
and how did y'all meet? How did it happen? How did it spark up?
Oh, it's all a series of, unexpected, almost mistakes. I went with a guy who's a friend. We went to his town, Body, that's now kind of popular. And we were going to stay for a couple of days. And uh, his aunt said, stay. And we got into a car accident, the only car accident that Lino has ever been in. And I was the only one hurt. And so I'm smiling because, I'm still here. I fractured my right metatarsal and I had a big contusion. And originally I thought he's way too short for me to, wind up with him. And then they, bandaged my legs so much that I must have been a foot taller. But
Was this in Italy where it
yeah,
happened?
yeah.
So how was the hospitalization? How was the service of ER?
Well, it was fine. I mean, it was a little weird because, I was this Jewish American long-haired girl, and there was like a monk who would come in and like pass right by me. Like I like he must have known I was a sinner. So otherwise otherwise it was fine.
Yeah. And so you can continue about, your experience once you left Italy, what happened when you got back?
What happened? I just went back to Brooklyn College and I got my degree, and Lino and I kept writing letters to be or not to be. We it was a very hard thing to decide about whether we'd be together because he didn't know any Italian and he didn't have work and stuff like that. But eventually he came over and it was to New York and he started slow and then he got somewhere and then he became a psychoanalyst.
Okay. Tell me about the instance, like, tell me about one of your favorite, because you're a psychologist, right?
No, psychotherapist. Just
Psychotherapist.
I'm a social worker and a psychotherapist.
That's still huge.
That's not
That's
bad.
yeah,
I just
yeah,
don't like to be, I don't want to pass for something I'm not.
understood. Um, so tell me about one instance that you had to reflect on your life based on what somebody else's life was like. And what I mean by that is when you interview or you analyze your patients, tell me about an instance that their situation made you reflect on your life.
Well, I've been thinking a lot about vulnerability. So I've had like this one person uh, who kind of acted like it's a guy and not too young, not too old. And he kind of came in with some issues, but he then would act like kind of he didn't want to be there. And what was I doing asking him how he was feeling? Like I was kind of intruding. And he found fault with me pretty easily, but he kept coming. So it's like I, I had to get kind of brave enough to talk to him about what it felt like without crying. What I mean is that, like, he was feeling vulnerable, let's say. He really was an anxious guy, but he had a lot of shame attached to that. So, what he would do is almost like energetically, he would throw this onto me. So then I was feeling vulnerable and easily rejected. And so I, I kind of had to make sense of that. And then in my way of working, which is kind of interpersonal and relational, I I told him that I was having a hard time with this and that I noticed that he kept coming. So a part of me was sure that a part of him wanted to be there, but I wasn't sure what to do about it. And I, at the same time, didn't want to be taking on all the anxiety in the room. And so I don't know if that's a good answer, but he started to reflect a little more and become more active. And I really think he started to engage because I let myself become vulnerable. And it was almost like I was as vulnerable as he, so he could feel comfortable sharing.
Tell me, vulnerability. Should we allow ourselves to feel vulnerable sometimes to break the ice, or how does that work? Vulnerability.
Well, vulnerability is like, oh God, it's a combination of, tenderness, open-heartedness, honesty, and then it gets into fear and weakness. And so, and I don't think a lot of us have any practice with how to express any of this without making a total mess of it. So I started to write about it because a few people in the field were saying, this is such a cool thing. Just be vulnerable, just be open, just da 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 da. And I thought, what is that? I thought it's way messier than it was being advertised as. So yes, we need to be vulnerable to love anybody, and we need to be vulnerable to empathize with anybody because if you think about it, empathy is putting yourself in the shoes of another person. And if you can't go into your own shoes with some depth, you're never going to care about anything else. So there's this big movement in the country now to like hate vulnerability, hate weakness, hate fear, hate, to kind of mock people who have this and to parade as if these people running things don't have any needs at all. They're just a ton of grandiosity, which is really uh, a defense against vulnerability. So vulnerability is like the key to our hearts, but it needs protection.
Well said. Tell me how being Jewish has shaped your career for the better.
It's funny. Well, you know, I mean, lots of groups of all kinds have a sense of humor. I mean, okay, but there's a certain Jewish sense of humor that I have, and really thank God, because it's helped me in my personal life, and it's helped me in in my in my work life because I can use it. And I just, since you're asking, this is not really about being Jewish, so I'm getting a little off topic, but I I a number of years ago was so upset that about the state of the world, actually, and about people not using the information they had, that I said to myself, I have to find a way to use my humor because it's just too depressing. And I have enough depression as it is. So, and just then in a spark, this kind of alter ego came to me, and her name is Dr. Ethel, and she has an English accent, and she's always dressed in orange. I mean, she might like to be a guest for you one day because
Okay.
she's pretty spiffy. Um, so I don't know how being Jewish, it's just such a part of me. I mean, it doesn't inform my politics at the moment, which has taken me a lot of work to kind of pull myself away from a kind of guilt at, being a certain way politically. But it's just, I don't know, I come back to the humor. And then I have to say, I think Jews do grieve. I think that's the most exquisite kind of grief I have ever seen. I'm sure it's not the only. They don't do the kind of music that you might come from, and I don't want to be assuming, but they do a kind of honoring of letting a person sit and just people being right next to them and just letting it be so that any emotion can come out, laughter, crying, anything. And there's just comfort there.
What is the culture of a Jewish person like? I would love to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, a culture of a person like me being Jewish is that I like Jewish food and occasionally celebrate holidays, but an Orthodox Jewish person, and I'm not talking about ultra Orthodox, observes the Sabbath, eats kosher food. It has to be, like meat has to be killed in a certain way, cheese has to be cooked in a certain way. There's a rabbi that has to bless everything. And it's very strict. It's very strict, but it's also very warm. So Orthodox Jews live near each other because on the Sabbath, when they go to synagogue, they cannot take a car. So, and then they eat at each other's houses. And sometimes, I wish I could do that, but I don't sort of like believe in all the commandments and all the strictness. It's not, doesn't
You
mesh.
do you believe in a God, but you don't believe in the rules, certain rules that binds their God that they believe in together. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm
What
saying
what are you
that
saying? Go
I,
ahead.
I, I don't know if I believe in a God. I believe, I'm going to tell you this, that I do believe that when I do my work, I find it very mystical and mysterious. And I find that it's like I'm working in the dark with no direction. And then all of a sudden, I guess there's a thread that seems to emerge. And I'm kind of I tend to be willing to follow it and see where it leads. So pretty mysterious. In fact, we were talking earlier about Carl Jung. One of the things he said to a therapist is you should leave your theories at the door and prepare to be changed. So,
Um, does he mean leave what you believe to know, at the door? Okay, I
yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
leave your assumptions at the door and leave the knowledge you have gained so far at the door, and let yourself kind of be open to what is and who is.
Do you think that um and just okay, how do you balance depression? I didn't want to ask the other question, but how do you balance depression? Because you said that you are either depressed or you have been depressed. I don't want to get it wrong.
Okay. I think I have depression. I have depression, and I don't have bipolar. I'm going to tell you everything. I don't have bipolar, but I do have a kind of whimsical, funny, joyful side. But I'm very sensitive, and I guess I've had a lot of trauma. So I would say that I'm easily triggered, easily hurt, still very sensitive. I mean, I'm working on protecting my own vulnerability as we speak too, but I still am in therapy. I do a lot of trauma work on myself as well. And the field, thank you, finally has been working on trauma a lot so that there are people who are just my age and older still working on healing. So the fact that I can still work on healing, and that fact that I can feel sometimes, like a heavy weight in my body and just sit with it and kind of know that it will emerge into something else helps. So I'm in therapy and I take all the help I can get.
What have you learned in your 79 years, over 79, almost a century? I just wish I
Don't
could
go
talk to you
there.
for
It's not
hours.
almost a century.
It's almost, and
No.
but the good thing is you're wise. You're wise. You have so much information. You've been on this planet 79 years. You done seen a lot. What have you, if you had one outlier that you have learned, what would it be?
I'm going to say that when I when I knew about Carl Jung, it's like I knew about something I had always known about, but which it feels like most people will not embrace, which is that we are good and bad and ugly, and we are capable of everything. And if we don't accept what is inside of us, we will find an enemy and we will try to hurt that enemy. And so the idea is to embrace our vulnerability and embrace the negativity too, embrace the parts of us that are badass and that are obnoxious and that are kind of maybe evil as well. And to know that, the way out of this mess, which doesn't seem like it's happening anytime soon, is for individual people and people as a group to start looking inward. Like, where is the evil in me so that I can know myself and bring myself to the table without having to blame and scapegoat.
Who was Carl Jung? People don't know that unless they study psychology.
Well, he's quoted a lot. But he was a psychiatrist from Switzerland, a psychoanalyst, and he was younger than Freud. And um, he practiced at the same time, but they went in very different ways. And he has a lot of stuff that I don't know about. But what I do know about is synchronicity, which is um, it's like coincidence, but it kind of follows. along kind of where you are internally with your mind. So it's like something comes to you, but you were kind of already thinking it, or you just open so things come in. And then the other thing is the shadow. And the shadow is the place that we put all the stuff we fear. And so a lot of people don't know their own shadow. So they think they know themselves, but they really don't. They know themselves on the surface, but they don't go deep, because to go deep is a little scary, except that the wonderful thing he said, and I can quote, that the thing we need to do is is get to know what we project onto other people, and to know our imperfections, because he says only the imperfect can love, because the perfect would have no need. So, but he was a very famous guy, and he wrote a ton of stuff that I have not yet read.
Tell me about your book.
Okay, I thought you'd never ask. um, it's called Vulnerability Protected, and I'll tell you, I was saying before, I found people talking about vulnerability and how cool it was and how smooth it was. And I thought, no, wrong. It's not that way. It's not that way for me. It's not that way for the people I work with. And so I said, I'll write about this. I'll explore this. And then came 2024, 23, I'm not even sure yet. But Donald Trump came on the scene again, and I thought, wow, wow. So the book needs to change a little and become more political, because we as a country have an epidemic of not allowing ourselves to be vulnerable, because if we did, we would not want a person so grandiose as a leader. So I started to do that. And then a friend told me about Isabel Wilkerson, who wrote the book Caste, Caste. And her thing was that she's a Black woman, and she felt that caste, not race alone, was the key problem of human nature, in humanity. And so the book is called Caste, The Origin of Our Discontents. And it blew me away. It blew me away, and it really talks about how we're all involved in something that we kind of inherit from the beginning, and we perpetuate the fact that certain people, not just races, but certain people are in certain groups, and they're expected to function poorly or expected to function well and go to Harvard, or expected to whatever. But that so that really blew me away and got the book even more to a cultural place than I had thought possible. And so a lot of the book is also about how vulnerability needs to be protected. And I go into clinical examples, and I have a chapter all about my life. So anybody who wants to learn more about how kind of messy it was, it's there. But I also have a chapter on how vulnerability can lead to courage, how vulnerability protected can lead to courage. Because I think if you're vulnerable and you're raw and you're kind of naked and you have no protection, you could be very deeply hurt. And I also mentioned that there are people in the world who don't have the luxury of even feeling vulnerable. You know, someone who's under siege, attack, famine, rape, any of that stuff is not going to be able to feel the feelings. So even that, it's like, is a privilege that some of us get to feel, even though it's hard and others do not.
Well said,
Thank you.
Carol. And where do you see yourself? What lessons and what things
In
do
the
you
next
what?
century,
Yeah, in the next century, where do you see yourself?
I'd like to spend a lot of time in Italy. I have grandchildren. I like to be with them. I don't see myself stopping writing like I'm just learning how to get on Instagram. I'm writing for Substack. So as long as I have the passion to be part of the voices for some level of sanity on this planet, I think I'll keep going, and
You
I'll
know,
travel.
you came from writing, papers. You came from the era of writing papers, not really typing like that, And so I say that to say you fit right in with Instagram and you fit right in with Facebook or wherever, it's just all about wiring your brain to, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I do have a woman who's a yoga teacher, and she comes to my house every week, and she's tutoring me. And one of the early things I posted was that I said that I was with my Instagram therapist because because I know not anything about it, but it's starting to seep in, and there's a place for Dr. Ethel. If you look me up, you'll see her too. So might enjoy her.
Thank you. We'll talk after this. Stay on the line. Before we close, how can the people reach you, Carol? Sorry.
Okay, how can people reach me? My email address is Carol, Carol, at the Human Climate, TheHumanClimate.com. My telephone number is area code 516-232-3556. And I have a website called The Human Climate. So, like, people can go on that. And there's Substack. And now there's Instagram.
Cool. Thank you so much, Carol. Stay on the line. Thank you guys for watching
Okay.
my show. Take care, be safe, and I'll see y'all later.
Never waste my time.